Hey, welcome back to the Urban Monk. Dr. Pedram here today with Maria Rodale, delightful individual. I've had the opportunity of hanging out with her recently in a film shoot we did for our Prosperity film. She is the CEO of Rodale Publishing, and she's been around books for a very long time, and now she's written her fourth major book, and we're here to talk about it because this is a subject near and dear to my heart. Maria, hi.
Hi, how are you?
Fantastic. Just offline, we were talking about how our kids end up in bed, and I woke up with a foot in my face this morning, and it's kind of a common occurrence around parenting.
Definitely.
Yeah. So you're so busy. You're the CEO of this very large publishing company, and you thought that it's important to pull over, and I know what it takes to write a book. It's a lot of work, and write this book because this is what the world needed at this time. And so, man, first of all, my hat off to you, because that's a lot of work.
Thanks.
Yeah, and secondly, how did this journey of writing this book come about? Why now?
Well, I'm the kind of person who always needs to learn by doing. And so when blogging first started many years ago, I thought, I'm going to start a blog. And the easiest thing for me to do was, and the most fun thing for me to do was to put up some of my recipes. And I blogged about a lot of topics, but the recipes really seemed to resonate with people. And as I was learning and watching the traffic and the metrics and seeing what resonated with people, it's anytime I wrote a recipe from scratch, it did really well. So I thought, this could be an interesting cookbook for me to do. And what's great about blogging is that, you do one blog a week, and 6 years later you have a cookbook. So I didn't, I didn't really, take a year off or anything. It was really done on a, bit by bit process over many years, and then I just put it all together and filled in some of the gaps. And I'm really happy with what I created, because it's a permanent record. Blogging can kind of be ephemeral.
Yeah, it gets buried fast.
Yeah, and it's really wonderful to have this cookbook in my kitchen, so I can actually remember my recipes very easily.
So the book is called Scratch, and it's really, there's this kind of generational gap that I was born into, this generation where my mom cooked most things from scratch, but when I'd go to my friends' houses, things came out of boxes and bags, and it was all processed stuff. So people in my generation, I'm 41 years old, really didn't have a baseline to know how to cook. They didn't know what a purple potato looked like. They didn't know what to do with kale. They didn't know what to do with anything. And so this is kind of like a lost wisdom archive of how to cook from scratch, which to me is really refreshing.
Yeah, and that was what was fun for me, is almost like recreating and reconstructing and reinventing some old recipes, because I'm like you. I mean, my mom cooked a lot of stuff from scratch, but we also had stuff from boxes. And when I was younger and out on my own and learning to cook, I realized if I wanted to eat organically, and so now I'm 54, so that was before Whole Foods, before a lot of things. I had to grow the food myself, and I had to cook it myself. And so it became kind of a fun game. I write in the book about how it started with a box of Bisquick, which my mom used all the time. And I looked at the label and went ugh, I don't want to eat this, and I don't want to feed this to my daughter. And then I learned that making biscuits from scratch is not only super easy, but it's completely, 1,000 times more delicious than Bisquick. So, that's kind of how this process started for me.
So there's kind of a pivot right there between having that kind of visceral reaction of being like, hey, what's in this crap? I don't want to eat this, and saying, oh, I know, I'm going to go figure out how to make this on my own, and using those as ingredients.
Yeah, well, and then you add into it that when I was learning to cook, just when I started to get confident, you had people like Martha Stewart come along who, upped the bar so high that anything I could do would be inadequate. And today we have that with the chef culture, where we revere and enjoy watching chefs as entertainment, but we're not cooking for a restaurant in our homes. We're cooking to nourish our families. And so I kind of went underground and just cooked for my family and, my kids for, 30 years. And it really was a delight and fun. And so now I'm kind of coming out of the closet as a cook. I'm not a chef. I'm a cook.
And that's an interesting distinction, right? Because right now, I think for a lot of people, to your point, is cooking has become a spectator sport.
Right.
Right. And that's not, that doesn't help when you got to eat 3 times a day.
Exactly.
So humanizing this and personalizing this. Now, just a little bit of pedigree here. Her grandfather is the guy who started the word organic in America. And so they have a long history of kind of farming and cultivating and all this. So you've grown up in and I stayed in the farmhouse when we were over there filming. It was amazing. And so it's like there's this long history of saying, okay, let's do the right thing with food. And a lot of people don't have that. And so, taking what we now know about, processed food and the need to eat vegetables and organics and getting the pesticides out and all that, and actually making that translate into what we do every day as part of our ritual with our family, that's really where I think the magic is happening. And I think that's really why, I feel like you're so passionate about making sure this book gets into all these hands.
Exactly. I mean, the power that happens at your kitchen table, whether it's with you alone or with your kids or with your friends, is so healing and nourishing and wonderful. It's just the most, beautiful thing you can do for yourself and your family. And it's so simple. It doesn't have to be complicated. It's really about trusting the taste of an ingredient and letting that ingredient kind of speak for itself. And I want people to feel safe in the kitchen. I want them to feel like confident and capable that you can do it. You can, whether it's the simplest thing or the hardest thing, it's fun, and you might make mistakes, but it's not the end of the world. It's still going to taste good, and for the few times it doesn't taste good, it's worth the risk.
Yeah. Well, and let's talk about ingredients real quickly, because if you get a conventional tomato, then you got to go put all sorts of weird, whiz-bang type of things on it to make it taste like something, versus an organic tomato, which should, off the vine, taste delicious. And so, the old days, it was salt and pepper, right? Because most food didn't need more, no?
Well, it's also about eating that tomato in season. So, we think about, whether it's organic or conventional, chemical, whatever, the idea of having a delicious tomato all year round is kind of unrealistic. So for example, it's the beginning of September, and I just spent the last month, making vat after vat of tomato sauce, and tomato soup with those fresh, garden tomatoes, and freezing them so that I have that taste all winter long. You're not going to get whether it's organic or conventional, you're not going to get that same taste in, March, unless it's shipped from the southern hemisphere, and then you have all the issues that go with that. So it's really about eating in season, eating organically, and then enjoying it while it's there and not expecting it every single day of the year.
And that gives the body an opportunity to cycle and phase. And you look at all the kind of medical studies and like hormesis and all the things that we talk about with kind of challenging the body with new things. If you're eating the same damn thing every day, your body goes, wah, right? It just falls asleep.
Right.
And so you titled the book Scratch. Why Scratch?
Well, because, I thought it was kind of a fun title.
I think it's great.
I like the boldness of it, but really that is the power that everybody has in their hands, is making something from scratch. And I wanted to demystify it and make it fun and easy, and just, there's nothing quite like eating something made from scratch. And everybody's capable of doing that.
most people in my generation are busy working their asses off, right? And you know, and that's been, I don't know, maybe 3-4 generations now. Is, you know, you go, you get some takeout, you get some delivery, you stop at a restaurant, you might go to a healthy restaurant, but there's still something missing. So someone who is in that world of kind of like spin and you know, doesn't know really how to go about starting you know, a healthy kitchen life, like what advice would you have for them?
Well, you know, I think the first thing to remember is that not everybody lives in a place where you can get healthy takeout or, you know, even good takeout, you know, or even a healthy restaurant. So I live in Pennsylvania, which, as you know, is you know, it's not New York City, it's not, you know, California. There's limited choices. So, so if you want really healthy, good food, you have to make an effort. But my whole point is, let's say you come home from work and you're tired, which, believe me, I have done.
Been there.
And, you know, your kids are going like, Mom, what's for dinner? I'm starving. You know, just making, you know, like an egg sandwich takes 5 minutes. You've got something in your mouth that's nourishing and delicious and simple. Yes, it's a breakfast food, but it's a dinner food. Or, you know, making spaghetti really quickly. There's so many things you can do that literally take 20 minutes. You know, the longest thing is waiting for the water to boil or you know, just making up your mind. So I wanted to give people the tools and the recipes to be like, you know what? You know, in the time it takes for like me to call and order takeout and have it delivered, I can make this from scratch and everybody will be happier. I mean, you have dishes to do, that's the only problem.
Yeah, it's just, you know, people don't even know what to do with them because they don't get dishes dirty.
But one of the things I do in the book is because I'm fundamentally a lazy person, I try to figure out, okay, how can I minimize the amount of dishes that I'm using in making something? So when I first started to cook, I'd use, you know, dozens of dishes and the whole kitchen would be a mess. And now it's like, you know what? You can actually make a cake using one bowl. You don't have to separate things out into 2 bowls. You know, just throw stuff in and it actually turns out really pretty good.
That's, you know what, that's one of the biggest challenges I've always had with it is, you know, you get into a recipe book and next thing you know, it's like Armageddon in your kitchen and you're like, damn it, you know, this either came out well or it didn't, but now I got 2 hours of labor to undo this.
That's right. That's
yeah.
right.
Yeah, no, that's
really
good.
You don't need that many tools. I don't own a food processor. I have a Vitamix, which I use sparingly, but you know, you don't need a lot of tools to cook really great food.
So if you're just getting started and you're gonna wanna like, you know, toe into this thing, do you just go like, okay, look, I'm gonna go find one recipe that sounds awesome for me and I'm gonna try it. And then I'm going to kind of, you know, maybe try it again and get it under my belt and then feel comfortable with it. And then that starts to kind of build a repertoire. Like, wow, you know, is that the easiest way in?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's beautiful and amazing to me, you know, and I have 3 daughters, so they all cook, even though my youngest is only 10. But what I see is like everybody, when they cook a recipe, it comes out a little bit different. You know, my sisters and I all make my grandmother's kugel, but each of us does it a little bit differently. And you know, the fun part of cooking is that you can version it to your own taste. So you don't like garlic, skip the garlic. You know, you want to add kale to everything, put kale in it. And so what I want to teach people is just the basics so that you have the power to like experiment and play in the kitchen and know that it's going to work out and it's going to be delicious and you know, it's going to be exactly the way you want it.
So once you understand the fundamentals, you could have like a traditional recipe. It's like, you know, here's my pasta primavera. It's come down from, you know, grandmama's thing and da 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 da. And then once you're comfortable with it, how easy is it to experiment, right? Like how easy is it to just play?
Super easy. You know, the only thing to fear is fear itself. And you know, I have a recipe for paella in the book, and you know, I kind of created it from a taste memory I had in Spain. And I know a Spanish woman, and she said, you know, that's the secret to paella is every woman has her own version of it, and it's never the same, for anybody who makes it. And, knowing that you have that permission, and that there's no perfect one way to do it. A lot of chefs will say, this is exactly how you have to do it. And if you don't do it this way, you're a failure. It's like,
come on.
Maybe if you're like in a certain kind of restaurant, that's the case, but not if you're at home. I mean, the kitchen is your like domain of freedom and empowerment. You can walk around in your underwear, it's like, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
I used to say, like, don't cook bacon in your underwear, because,
your skin might be upset. Done that. I actually, if I ever cook bacon, I got the apron on now, because I've had that experience like in the morning. It's like, this was dumb. This was really, really bad. There's this culture now that I see. So it's like this chef thing. I want to lean into this a little bit, because I think it's ugly, right? You're watching these people competing and like super stressed out, and like just they're getting pounded by this like drill sergeant type chef person. It's a lot of shame. It's a lot of like all the bullshit that TV, is, created for itself, that makes people not really want to hang out and watch TV anymore. Thank you, TV. And then people kind of associate that with cooking, right? Mm-hmm. And it's, then I think of like you in your kitchen kind of humming and dancing and singing and doing your thing. Like, my mom is so happy in her kitchen. I love cooking with my wife, right? Yeah. And so the vibe is completely counter to what the home kitchen should be,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, I think, I don't want to criticize any of the TV shows. I mean, actually, honestly, I don't watch too many of them. I mean, I enjoyed Michael Pollan's series on Netflix, Cooked. He's a great writer, and and again, that's kind of exploring like how.
That's different.
Yeah, that's different. It's more educational, but yeah, I don't believe in shame. I think shame is one of the most offensive, shameful things, So I often tell people when they come to my house, it's like, this is a shame-free house, You can do whatever you want, you can be creative, and you won't be judged, and it's that way in my kitchen too. And I think that's an important thing for all of us to create for our families, because shame is so damaging to children, and it's not worth it. I mean, it's never a good thing. So everybody's kitchen should be a shame-free zone, and that means don't try to feel like you have to be perfect or you're competing with anybody. You're just feeding and nourishing yourself and your family, and that's a beautiful thing, and it's personal. What feeds and nourishes you is different than what your neighbors are feeding and nourishing themselves with. So, big proponent of like, don't baby your kids in terms of what what you will or won't feed them. I mean, they should eat what you're eating, and they'll develop their own personal tastes, but you shouldn't force them to eat anything. But you also shouldn't give in to them just wanting what I call the white food diet, buttered noodles and, potatoes. Starch. So everybody gets everything at my table, and but nobody's forced to eat anything.
Got it. Yeah, it's hard because my kid, my 2-year-old does not like broccoli. And, I know broccoli's good for him, but I don't want to fight every night either. So it's a challenge.
Yeah. What I found with my kids is that like eating it raw with ranch dressing does the trick. So, but you don't have to, don't force it.
Yeah, because you see people 20 years later. I actually have a friend who has a very profound, and this is like the mayor of a city, like a medium-sized city. So he's not a slouch. He has a profound fructophobia, because when he was a kid, his mom used to make him eat bananas with like milk and cereal, whatever. And she said, you can't get up until you finish your plate. And he's deathly afraid of bananas.
Yeah.
And it's like, holy crap, man, that really hit your young mind pretty hard.
Well, I mean, my oldest daughter is, so I was a young mother when I had her, and there was like 1 or 2 times I was like, you're not getting up from the table. And like, she outlasted everybody, like she was not. And like she was so picky, and I couldn't understand it. And what I learned, what she learned, is she's like extremely gluten intolerant. So that explains why she never would eat a sandwich. And so it made it hard to be her mother when I was younger, but it really taught us all a lot, and taught me to respect a kid's fundamental preferences. And to this day, both she and her husband will not eat a banana. So.
Huh. Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
So you've had like almost 3 decades of generational shift with your daughters, and so like does that lay out differently? Like, has food changed in the way you can interface with them? I mean, it must be so different now.
It's unbelievable. So when my first daughter was born, like I said, there's no Whole Foods. If you wanted organic, you had to make it yourself, or like go to the co-op, which wasn't always the greatest. And times were very different back then. Nobody knew what sushi was. I mean, I remember learning what pesto was and thinking, wow, that's really interesting. So that was one era. And then, my next daughter came along, and, starting to have a lot more options organically. Organic baby food was a thing. And then with my last daughter, who was born 10 years ago, it's like anything. But I'm really grateful that I didn't have anything available to me all those years, because it did teach me how to cook. And, because I love food. I'm a foodie, and my youngest daughter, she and I joke. I mean, she's a foodie too. I mean, she loves food and will eat almost anything, and has a real palate, and she'll smell a food before she eats it, so it's fun. It's fun to see how each kid is different, each generation is different, each decade is different, and but they all love my cooking. So.
Well, that is the ultimate compliment. So let's talk about these things. Your youngest one grew up in a world that always had a cell phone. And a smartphone, really, at that point, almost is there. So by the time she could use them, they were showing up. Right now, like, all I see is like, it's like food porn, right? It's like all this Instagram picturing of all these recipes and how it's kind of turned into this food art. How much of that you think is useful and helpful, driving people in the right direction? How much of it is a distraction from the actual the process of cooking and hanging out in the kitchen?
Yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, I do think it's actually a good thing, and it's really been helpful, because what it does is it exposes so many more people to so many more food cultures and food ideas and places. And, one of the things I love about having a phone at the table is, and my middle daughter is like the queen of this. It's like, if anybody has a question, she can get the answer immediately. So I remember, like, before we had that, like, you had to go to the library, or, and then you could never find the right book. And so there's this kind of instant education that's available to kids today that I think is awesome. Having said that, I think it's really important to have that, put the phone down time, and we're just going to be together and actually talk to each other. Yeah. So I don't, I try not to make hard and fast rules, but overall, I think it's a good thing. And that comes in terms of me being curious about a food or a recipe, and I can look it up right away, and or if I'm hungry for something and I don't have the recipe, I can find it.
Did they cook with you over the generations? Like,
oh yeah.
How'd you pull that one off?
Well, starting from when they're like, super tiny, and I'm like, I put them in those like little bouncy chairs right next to me as I'm cooking, and I'm like, okay, it's time for cooking school, and okay, now I'm gonna put the water on to boil, and do you think the pasta's right? So it's just my way of like engaging and not being bored and going crazy, when I'm cooking, and well,
also babysitting them simultaneously.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You can't just like let them, alone in a room when they're that age. Yeah. And then, I think the most important thing I've learned in terms of getting my kids engaged is like letting go of that need for me to do everything and for me to be perfect. I mean, they want to measure stuff and like mix and stir and, you know, try things. So it's really important, you know, like, because I think a lot of people's nature, including mine, is like, no, let me do it, you know, I'll do it right, and I won't make a mess. And, you know, just to let them make a mess is, you know, such a joy for them that it's worth the extra cleanup time. And then they feel a part of it, and they feel like they made it, and and then they'll eat it because they made it.
And that's the ownership part. There's actually a piece to this that's funny. Let me. We're actually recording live now for the show. Let me get you to shift back. You're kind of starting to
Okay.
starting to scoot. So come the other way. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, now we're centered again. Awesome. So I actually, you know, we tore out our lawn. We're in Southern California, so we don't get water. So we tore out our lawn. We put all these raised beds out there, and I'm out there every day with my kid, my son. My baby's too young. She's out there now, but you know, just picking stuff and planting and all that. And now he's turned our raised beds into his like sandboxes. So he's in there with his little bulldozers, like, you know, like tearing things out and, you know, trying not to. And it's like, at first I'm like, you're just
yard.
Yeah, exactly. It's a living digging yard. And I'm like, wow, you know, at first I'm getting pissed off about it. Like, you know, you're ruining everything. And I'm like, oh my God, he's got his hands in the dirt. What's wrong with you, Dad? Just let him be.
Yeah.
So there's one less carrot, right?
That is essential, is to let them play in the dirt, you know, let them have their own corner of the garden, and they will plant stuff and completely forget about it. And it'll be a, you know, disaster. But you have to kind of give them that like chance to fail and to try it. And you know, there's dozens of studies that show that kids who garden and are part of a family who gardens will eat more vegetables than kids who don't, because, you know, you're out there and it's like, look at this tomato, you know, and a green bean, and oh, that's how broccoli grows, you know. So it's very, they feel part of it. And yeah, all my kids, you know, and also there's other studies that show that playing in the dirt, playing with farm animals prevents you from having allergies. So it's the most kind of health-inducing important thing you can do, is let your kids play outside, play in the dirt, get dirty, you know, roll around in it, have fun, and don't fret about it.
How fun was it, as, you know, the mother of, you know, from the Rodale legacy of, you know, going out and growing some tomatoes with the girls and then coming in and cooking them? Like, how does that connect it all up for them?
Well, I mean, it's, to a certain extent, I think, you know, we all take it for granted because it's just what we do, and it's the kind of thing I think they appreciate, but they don't think is that weird or unusual. It's just what we do, and so I don't know. Yeah. You have to ask them. Yeah,
exactly. You should ask them. So, you know, ask them how that influenced their time in there, because, you know.
I mean, I think it's. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm leaning into it because I you know, feel that it's important, you know, and I'm wondering what that's going to do to a kid growing up in a modern world. You know, it's kind of Waldorfian. You know, it's like go get back in it.
The other thing that's really important in terms of parenting that I've seen time and time again is that kids watch what you do more than they hear what you say. Like, it's a fact. So, you know, if they see me out in the garden and coming in and you know, cooking, they are learning and they're watching and they're mimicking. So that's more important than me sitting down and giving them a lecture about something, or, you know, letting them kind of run off and not see it at all. And I always take my kids food shopping with me and you know, get them involved in that process as well.
You're the CEO of a pretty large company. You're busy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What's that like? You know, coming home and having that work-life balance, like just being able to shut it down and go into the kitchen and be, you know, how, you know, I know a lot of people in my audience in particular struggle with that work-life balance. How do you do it?
Well, you know, first let me be completely honest and say I have help. You know, so here's what I hate to do. I hate to do laundry. I hate to do cleaning, and yeah, those are the two things that I really don't like. So, you know, I have a cleaning lady who does my laundry, so I don't have to worry about that. But I do love to cook, and so to me, cooking it kind of goes into a different part of my head, and it's more meditate. It's a mindful practice, and so it's that like transition. And I don't drink, so I don't have, I can't have a cocktail, for that transition. And I think cooking is actually, more positive and constructive than having a cocktail. So, by the time dinner's done, it's like I feel, much more relaxed. I feel like I've kind of detoxed, from what has happened in that day, and I can really enjoy the rest of the evening, whether it's going back to work, working, or just spending time with my family. So I'm not saying everybody can do that or wants to do that, but that's what I do.
That's interesting. I actually have been playing with this a lot because I'm off traveling and filming and all this. And so we've actually, our nanny is wonderful. And I said, well, listen, you have all these wonderful recipes that you brought back from, your family lineage in Mexico. Here's our ingredients list. So just cook it with the good stuff. And, I come home to a nice warm meal. I feel like I've been robbed of the experience of cooking, but you know what? Daddy's off working, and you can't fight, you can't win all those battles, right? So, I cook on weekends. I cook when I can.
Yeah, no, and I think that's an important thing to realize. Is like, I don't cook every single night. I mean, I'm traveling a lot too, and when I go to New York, and which is every other week for a couple days, I'm eating out in all sorts of restaurants, dives and fancy restaurants, and I'm exploring, and I travel a lot, and so when I do come home, that is my my pleasure and my special time. So, but it does end up being probably five nights out of the week that I'll cook. So
that's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah. So where do people get stuck? Like, what are some of the misconceptions, between me listening to you right now and saying, okay, that sounds interesting, but not for me, right? And actually saying, oh no, I'm all in. I'm going to start cooking from scratch and I'm going to figure this out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you're starting at the very beginning, which is where I started, there's that, like, that's just the whole fear of like, and I've had somebody recently ask me, like, how do I know I'm not going to poison my family? And it's like, okay, okay, there's certain mushrooms and like rhubarb leaves, and other than that, and like maybe the puffer fish in Japan. So, avoid those things. So just, fear of like harming or eating something that's bad is a fear. And, there's only one cure for that, which is just to start, and like, look at expiration dates, smell things, taste things. And then the other thing is like the intimidation of, oh, it's complicated, and I need all these tools, and you don't. And even, are my pots and pans, good enough? So there's so much peer pressure and intimidation, and your pots and pans are good enough.
They'll do just fine, and later on, if you want to upgrade, there's always someone.
My favorite pans are those cast iron pans, and they're like cheap as dirt. Well, I mean, dirt's expensive, but it's like $12 for a great pan that will last you a whole lifetime. So don't be afraid.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's so much information out there about, like, the aluminum's giving you cancer and autism, and like there's so much out there that stuns people into paralysis and saying, oh man, I have aluminum pans, which means I'm going to go eat at Panda Express tonight instead.
Well, and what's been actually great for me personally is, so I grew up in the organic family with, all the like, aluminum is bad. But then I married into an Italian-American family, and I'm now divorced. But I mean, I learned so much from my in-laws, and they cooked everything in aluminum pans. Tomato sauce, pasta, the same aluminum pan, for forever. And they both, my father-in-law just recently passed away at the age of 95, and my mother-in-law is still going strong at 95. So, it's not any one thing. No. It's a lot of things that make a healthy life. But, they always cooked and ate real food. So the most important thing is really to nourish, yourself and your family with real food, and, do the best you can.
That's really it, right? It's, if we talk about a vitalistic model of health. It's about giving your body all it needs to have a fighting chance. Because if you're constantly saying, oh, the sun's giving me cancer, the aluminum's doing this, that person just sneezed. I mean, you don't stand it creates a neurosis that just crushes you versus, cooking from scratch, eating right, taking care of yourself, and giving your systems the kind of robust advantage that they would normally have against all the crap outside, right? And
I think that's one of the things I learned most from growing up in that, because not only did my grandfather kind of start the organic movement, but, we published Prevention magazine. So, we saw every single health craze you could imagine. And I always in my gut said, it's about real food. It's butter, not margarine. It's, olive oil, not,
Crisco.
Artificial oil, Crisco. And, what studies are showing now is that's the best way to eat is, just stick to the real stuff, real vegetables, not processed stuff. If you're going to eat sugar and desserts, stick to like real sugar, organic sugar and not, artificial substitutes.
Yeah, and that's hard because there's been so much information and misinformation in that direction for so long that, again, people are like stunned. And all the studies I've looked at say basically eat unprocessed food. If you're having meat, have clean meat and eat lots and lots of vegetables, 50% or more. And then everything else is kind of negligible. Just, go out and live your life.
Exactly. Go out and enjoy the sunshine.
Yeah, exactly. So Maria got sunburned last time we hung out because my brown ass could handle it. It was fun. We were outside for a long time, out on the farm, so it was good. So, all right, I'm going to start as part of my thing doing some of your recipes with my family, and I'll just kind of report back. I love cooking from scratch, and again, it's like I either got to go ask mom, and for that it's all Persian stuff, and our Persian stuff has too much rice in it. So now I can actually go to like healthy, wholesome things that are that are outside of my cultural heritage, and also dip into that. So where can people find the book? And I would love for people to kind of do this kind of cooking thing with me. We'll just do recipes every week.
Awesome. Well, you can find it obviously anywhere books are sold, like Amazon. And then we also have a website called scratchcookbook.com where you can order it. And if you pre-order it, which you can still do, there's all kinds of extra bonus gifts you can get. So scratchcookbook.com is a good place to go. But also Amazon.
I saw some of your videos. I saw some of the kind of bonus videos that you did for it, and they were great. They were really well done, and they actually made me hungry. I was like, I want to eat that.
Well, I want to show, I want to just show people that it is so easy. One of my highest recurring responding blogs is how to make mashed potatoes from scratch, and it is like the easiest thing you can imagine, and anybody can do it.
Yeah. But it's mystified, right? It's like, oh, well, it comes in this powder, and we would just add water. I don't get what. And that's the generation, kind of the generational hiccup that we're all recovering from. Is we got so good at mass producing food and processing it. We said, well, we don't have to worry about that anymore. Let's go worry about everything else instead of the most important thing, which is food. Maria, I love your work. I love everything that you're doing. I'm gonna start cooking with this and kind of hanging with my tribe and reporting back, and I'll video some of it. And
thank you. I love what you're doing too, Pedram. It's amazing.
Thank you. We have fun. Yeah. Okay, excellent. Thanks so much for being here.
You're welcome.
So the URL one more time.
Scratchcookbook.com.
Scratchcookbook.com. Maria Rodale, delightful human being. It was a pleasure having her on the show. Let me know, give me comments if you want to join me in what we're doing in terms of myself and my wife kind of doing the recipes and cooking along. Join us. It's going to be fun. You can check me out at theurbanmonk.com, and I will see you next time.